The president is defending his decision to pull 2,000 American troops out of Syria. In a series of tweets today, the president said that this was no surprise in his view. This is a campaign promise that he has now fulfilled. In one tweet, the president posed a question that has long been debated as part of America's foreign policy. And I'm quoting here, does the USA want to be the policeman of the Middle East, getting nothing but spending precious lives and trillions of dollars protecting others who in almost all cases do not appreciate what we are doing? Do we want to be there forever? Time for others to finally fight. The troop withdrawal has received mixed reaction on Capitol Hill. Some Republicans have applauded the president, but many others have said it's a dangerous move, a move that could allow ISIS to regain strength and could empower Iran and Russia. And now there are questions about whether the president could eventually pull more troops out of Afghanistan as well. CBS News national security correspondent David Martin joins me now from the Pentagon. David, I want to play a bite for you from Senator Lindsay Graham today about the decision.
This decision, I believe, has been made by the president, not with sound military advice against it. I think his entire national security team has expressed concerns about withdrawing now.
Is there concern the president's not listening to his generals?
Well, first place, we ought to say generals are not the last word in wisdom. And it's not unheard of for a president to listen to their advice and decide that he's going to overrule their advice because he's got higher priorities. But in this case, it appears that the president just didn't want to hear it. He'd made up his mind, and that was how it was going to be. Now, he's commander-in-chief. That's his prerogative. But the effect is to leave his generals out on a limb, because they had been proceeding on the assumption that there was this agreed-upon strategy that the U.S. military was in Syria for the long haul to effect this so-called lasting defeat of ISIS, which means to return stability to these areas that were once held by ISIS, so they couldn't just come back in after they'd been chased out by the U.S. military. So they'd been making public statements based on this understanding, and they'd been making commitments to allies based on this understanding. And then all of a sudden, he pulled the rug out from under them and left the generals looking and feeling like fools, and left U.S. allies wondering if they can count on the U.S. When it makes a commitment.
Yeah, that certainly is a big concern, especially in diplomatic quarters as well. It's 24 hours now, David, since this was announced. Do you know if the Pentagon has a detailed plan or a detailed timeline for getting these troops out?
Well, the goal is 30 days, but the military is not sure that they can meet that goal, because this has to be an orderly withdrawal, and it has to be well protected, because ISIS is obviously going to try and make it look like it chased the U.S. out of Syria. So there are going to be, you can assume, some ISIS attacks on the U.S. troops as they try to get out of there. But the more important question is not exactly how many days it takes U.S. troops to get out of Syria, but what form, if any, will U.S. support to the continuing fight against ISIS in Syria take? And specifically, will the U.S. continue to fly airstrikes in support of the other countries that have troops on the ground? And that is still undecided.
David, as we've seen in Iraq, the U.S. military has spent a great deal of time training local forces. Once we notice large pullouts, it doesn't always happen the way people would like things to happen. With a major pullout, what is the Pentagon's biggest concern at this point?
Well, it's the concern of undermining the premise of what has become its major policy for conducting these wars in the Middle East, and which is they fight wars by, with, and through partner nations. In other words, you don't put U.S. troops on the front lines. You enable lesser militaries to put their troops on the front lines. And if you enter into a partnership like that, and then all of a sudden the partner nation wakes up one morning and finds out that the U.S. is pulling out, that sort of undermines the whole premise on which these operations are based. And Syria's just one example. That's what we're doing in Iraq. That's what we're doing in Afghanistan. That's what we're doing in Yemen. That's what we're doing in Somalia. That's how the U.S. military is operating these days.
David, you and I were talking about Afghanistan. The president had recently said that criticizing the presence of U.S. troops there. Do you get the sense that the president might pull U.S. forces out of Afghanistan as well?
Well, I don't have any indication that he's about to make a decision like that, but I sure do get the sense that people in this building are concerned that that might be next on his agenda. I mean, if he can make a peremptory decision like this on Syria, he could also do it on Afghanistan, because he has made no secret about his distaste for the operation in Afghanistan. I mean, when he rolled out his new Afghanistan policy in August of 2017, he began by saying, my instinct was to pull out, and then going on to say he basically let his military advisors talk him into making a small increase in the number of troops in Afghanistan. But that small increase hasn't done much to affect the stalemate in Afghanistan, and it's very easy to see that the president is getting frustrated by the lack of progress in Afghanistan, and could make another snap decision to get out of there. And the fact that I don't see any indication from the meetings that are going on that it's about to happen doesn't mean much, because of the way that the president caught everybody by surprise with the decision to pull troops out of Syria. Now, there's one big difference between Afghanistan and Syria. In Syria, he could plausibly claim that that ISIS had all but been evicted from all the territory that it once held, and so he could make a plausible case that ISIS was, if not defeated, at least on its last legs. But he can't make that argument in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a stalemate. The Taliban is not on its last legs.
David Martin coming to us from the Pentagon. David, grateful for your time.
Sure.